Right, Commissioner Germaine. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. 1 second. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, if, ready?
Ready.
Okay, this time, call the city council work session to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Kilgrave. Viney. Here. Germaine. Here. Lamore.
Excused.
Felder. Hader. Mayor Clark.
Here. Next item is public comment. We have 3 items on the agenda this evening for the work session regarding La Pleasance Road corridor plan presentation, the residential housing strategy roadmap presentation, and discussion regarding Public Act 233 of 2023. Any comments from the public that's present here this evening? Any comments? Seeing none. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 4791, La Pleasance Road non-motorized corridor plan presentation.
Thank you. Manager Robinson, any introductions or thoughts, or we're going to get right to it?
Yes, Your Honor and Council. As you know, we have been in partnership with the Monroe Township along with the Monroe County Road Commission, and we have been using the working with Manikin Smith and Ms. Fortin to come up with our plan for the non-motorized corridor, down La Pleasance Road, through our city, basically Jones Avenue, all the way through down La Pleasance and all the way into Bowles Harbor. And we are at a point where Ms. Fortin is here and ready to present what we have done on this corridor improvement plan thus far.
Very good. Lucy, good to see you.
Thank you. I want to spend a little time just introducing this and go very briefly over this planning effort that's been going on for about a year. There is a report, so if you want more detail, you're welcome to look at this report after my brief presentation. And I'm going to focus on the city portion of this study. So the impetus for this really came about from the I-75 bridge. And you might have noticed that there's some pedestrian improvements there that lead to nowhere. That was part of the reason why it became like very important. And there's a person in the room, and I'm Florence Buchanan, who's the chair of the Monroe County Bike and Ped panel, who really was the driving force behind this whole thing, along with Mayor Clark and others, started the process rolling. And it led to a multi-community effort, as Mr. Robinson mentioned, with the township and a application to SEMCOG Planning Assistance grant. Which the city was instrumental in putting together. I want to mention Patrick Lewis and Mayor Clark, who really worked hard on that one and got it. So here I came to help make this happen. There is a committee, mentioned some of the names here, and I would like to acknowledge them. On the city side, of course, is Mayor Clark, City Manager David Robinson, and Director of Engineering and Public Services, Patrick Lewis. Supervisor Alan Barron also participated actively with the steering committee. And Managing Director from the Monroe County Road Commission, David Leach, and County Highway Engineer Matt Snell were part of the steering committee. And Florence Buchanan, Chair, also participated actively in this committee. Members of the Manikin Smith group that participated also were Barry Bushman from the onset, who was also provided a great deal of advice with his huge experience, and Eric Bennett. They're not here tonight, but I'm represent them in a way. Very big shoes to fill. So with that, just want to go over, so that we talked about the planning assistant program that we received, grant that we received. And the study is also documented in this report that will be, I'm sure, available online soon. The location map on this slide really points to the study area, and it starts at Woodchuck Creek in Bulls Harbor and continues into the city to 6th Street and include also Jones Avenue. A big part of this project also involved the idea that Jones in La Pleasance would turn into Jones and be reconfigured. Jones would be reconfigured as it needs future improvement. So I'll point that out when we get to it. And the study included, look at the existing conditions, schematic design, and cost. All of that in view of becoming developed enough to be able to supplement and document a grant submittal. There are essentially, an overview here, 3 segments. The one in Bulls Harbor, the commercial area, and in the city portion, township to city. So I'm going to go very briefly with the township portion. What this shows is the type of improvements that and we focus really on the bicycle and pedestrian improvements as the study was labeled. And so that blue dash line represent a certain type of improvement, which is shared roadways. I'll explain in a bit. And the yellow really points to a sidewalk. The circular at intersection is meant to represent intersection improvements. So as far as in Bulls Harbor, given and there are various ways you determine what's appropriate and what's suitable and not in certain roadways, but primarily the factors involve traffic speeds and traffic volumes. Because they're low in Bulls Harbor, and there's other constraint, right-of-way space is also physical space is limited. And there are ditches, pretty deep ditches there. The recommendation there is what's called shared roadways, where you have pavement markings that look like those on the picture that are labeled sharrows, and where bicyclists are meant to mix with traffic. So that was the recommendation from Woodchuck Creek, essentially north to La Pleasance Creek. As you reach the corner there, Lake Street, where La Pleasance sort of turns, then there was enough room and enough activity to warrant a sidewalk on the west side. And so that is what this picture really points to. The second segment, as we're looking at this overall picture, is the commercial district. There we have greater speed, greater traffic, and more space. So what's in red really represents what's called the separated shared use path, separated from the traffic, essentially, which would be primarily on the east side of the roadway, with sidewalks recommended for strictly the portion in between Albane and the last commercial, the Go-Kart Plus, I believe, the commercial business. And there would be some special treatment at a couple of instances where we are very limited, and that's at the bridge deck over I-75, as well as La Pleasance Creek, where we need to think of retrofitting this new structure to truly accommodate both pedestrian and bicyclists. Unfortunately, they didn't think of that when they did that. They built a sidewalk, a wider shared use path that leads to a road. So now we are having to think of retrofitting this deck to make that happen more safely. So these pictures really point to the shared use path on one side. And so the shared use path compared to the sidewalk is wider, and it has to meet certain standards. It'd be at least 10 feet wide to meet what's called AASHTO standards. And the portion on the west side is a sidewalk. The third segment in this overview is the transition from township or road commission roads to city streets. And it becomes a city at Kentucky, only on the one side of the road, on the east side. So in best of world, we would have the shared use path ending at Kentucky, and there you would start these, what the city typically does, which is bike lanes and sidewalks. We have constraints in between Kentucky and Jones, and therefore the thought is to have strictly a sidewalk on the one side of the street. And so it would look like this: 2 bike lanes, or a paved shoulder, a bike lane, and a sidewalk, essentially. Along with the sidewalk and the bike lane, you would need a curb on the east side. As you reach Jones Avenue, and this is what you're seeing here, you would have the typical bike lanes, sidewalks on both sides of the roadway, which is really more the North Custer type treatment, the complete street treatment, in other words. In the section from Jones to 6, we would simply fill the gaps of some of those sidewalks and put those shared use pavement markings, because we are now retrofitting an existing street, and we don't have the width to really warrant a bike lane. So that's what you would. And because now we reconfigured Jones, and I'll show you that in a little bit, this would become way more local streets. So we looked at, we developed those schematic design sheets, 3 of which, or 4 of which, are really pertain to the city, and that's what I will spend my time on for you guys. And it's really from the railroad, where the 2 railroad before at Dunbar, onto the city. And so the top part there is really in orange. You see the shared use path, which is still in the township, which continues on the east side to Kentucky. As you reach Kentucky, you cross Kentucky, and that's where it becomes city property on the lower part of this slide, where you have a sidewalk and bike accommodations, on-street bike accommodations. In yellow-orange, that's a sidewalk. And in green within the street, that's the on-street bicycle accommodations. And as you reach Jones, you see there on the lower slides how Pleasance would turn into Jones. We use Mr. Lewis' concept there to turn into, and it wouldn't make sense to have the trucks go to reach Monroe Street using Jones, as opposed to getting into more of a neighborhood. And it would greatly, I think, enhance this neighborhood as well. La Pleasance would then become an intersection at that juncture. In Navarre would also be rethought as far as how it connects to La Pleasance. And so this is why the treatment from Jones to 6 become more local. And you have those on-street sharrows and sidewalks being improved. On Jones, and also this is what that is, the shared roadways and sidewalks. On Jones, and this is the top part of this slide and the bottom, from La Pleasance, I switch orientation here. I apologize. I hope you're not too dizzy looking at this. So the top part is how La Pleasance turned into Jones. And then there's this curve around as it is today, that continues all the way to straight to Monroe Street there. You would have those sidewalks in orange, as well as bike lanes on both sides, and we would have a completely improved roadway infrastructure as well. This is not a retrofit roadway, as most of the other project. It would be a complete reconstruction. Finally, we put some costs to this. We used what's called a Merrill cost estimate, which is a cost a way of devising costs that's sanctioned by the grant. That's what's required by most grant, and it requires a certain software. They make it really difficult for people or for anyone to do this. And highlighted in yellow there are the segments that pertain to the city. So Kentucky Avenue to Jones, and this is strictly, I want to point out, the bicycle and pedestrian improvements. It's not the whole roadway. So Kentucky Avenue to Jones is what's about $500,000. Jones to 6 is the simple sharrows and sidewalk gap filling, so we're looking at 200,000. And the Jones Avenue one, which is assuming the roadways being reconstructed, putting in sidewalks and bike accommodations. So further later, we were asked to submit a proposal for doing this work and to potentially apply for a grant as early as October in a couple of months for you, and are looking forward to doing this should you want to do this and pursue this. So this is in essence what I have to present. If you have any questions, I can answer.
Thank you, Lucy. I know there's a lot of information here, but I know we've talked about La Pleasance Road Corridor. Of course, the opportunity presented itself in the planning grant if it's multi-jurisdictional, which had the partnership with the city, the Monroe Township, and the Road Commission. It gets more favorable review because they're looking to make connections to other communities, to the waterfront, to the downtowns, and so that's how the planning grant came to be that council supported. And as Lucy said, now it comes back. This is the product that was what was produced from the study. And next is, if you're looking for grants through SEMCOG, it's called a TAP grant, Transportation Alternative Plan, and that's where we have done in the past as well, obtained funding, which usually is about a 20% match. And as you can see, this is just a estimated cost for the improvements. So that's kind of where we're at now. But if you have questions for Lucy about anything on the item or the section specific to the city, I will add that La Pleasance Road from Kentucky to Jones is really shared jurisdictionally because the one side is in the city, and I'll say the lake side is Monroe Township. So the opportunity presents it that we have communication with through the manager to Monroe Township and see if we can put in a multi-jurisdictional TAP submission grant, either whether it's for this section or the entire section. Of course, those costs are much different, as you see when you get out to Pleasance Road and on into Bulls Harbor. But we need to at least consider what it is we may be looking to do as a council in the near future. Questions for Lucy? Councilman Gerini.
What happens to Navarre Street in the connection to La Pleasance?
So let me
Can't tell by the picture.
go back to that. Do you see it's the bottom and there's actually writing right there, so it's really not the focus, I guess. And all it is removing that weird triangular intersection
gone.
to make it more direct.
So I think it says, proposed enhanced pedestrian crossing with pavement markings. You're right, that cement triangle that's there, which is really trying to get people so they can turn right or left, and so there's not, people coming right in the same area. They're still with proper markings, and without that, we actually allow more space. But it slows down because it's not going straight past now. It's going to be La Pleasance Road would T intersection basic with Jones, so that's going to be close to the end, and people need to be stopping or just turning as they're coming on. So it does slow the speed down there, and I think gives people more time to, if they're wanting to get on Navarre or come off of Navarre onto La Pleasance. But it's not being closed. That's not being proposed.
No, it's not.
We need to have access, because if you close that, everybody's got to go all the way the other way, probably to Scott or something to get on, and that's on to La Pleasance. We don't want that either. So people want access.
Right.
Good question. Andrew?
The impact to the VFW parking lot that's right there.
Some. I think that conversations with this group will need to be happening. I think the idea was that possibly there's the city owns some property east or rather west of there that could accommodate the parking they may lose. But certainly when you look at that parking lot on this property, there's probably ways to rethink that and I'm the queen of that, actually. I could look at that and make sure that you don't lose too many, because that will be their concern, most probably, is losing parking.
It's a great question. It did come up in our conversations as the overall committee on this planning grant. And it's the opportunity to reconfigure to maybe, get truck traffic so they are going to the major roads versus finding themselves downtown and not being able to make the turns. But that was a consideration is, okay, how do we make that the best possible route for vehicles and trucks? And if it impacts the VFW property, how do we make that whole? How do we make it so they're not losing something? They have adequate spaces. They have the spaces they currently have. And then I'm just going to mention it only because those are things that'll come later through council for consideration. Is when you look at, go to the next slide, as you look at the configuration how Jones Avenue goes around. Of course, we have the Habitat for Humanity resale store there. And I think there's conversations that need to be had there as well. We need to find partners, and we want to find how we can adequately make this. It would be nicer if we could smooth out the curves, but not so it inhibits the ability for the resale shop to continue as well. But those are conversations that come, as we always say, these are concepts, right? I think of all the plans that come forward to the council and in renderings we've seen of things. These are concepts, and how you get there is through all the detail and the discussion of how to finalize what's going to be operationally the best without negatively impacting two properties that are adjoining there. And of course, as you go down Jones Avenue, we know that Navarre Field's there, the state police, and of course DPS, and there's it gets pretty straight at that point. So your question, Andrew, is excellent because it does show an impact, but we have thought about how we would present that and have conversation. And it actually, if we did smooth that out, it actually makes more space on that side too. But we have to think about that overall. And that's a conversation, as we know, that Habitat for Humanity property, the resort, is in Monroe Charter Township. It's not in the city. Deb?
So did I hear this correctly, that when the Pleasance goes into Jones, that's where we want the truck traffic to go?
Yes, that's what we want to encourage, yes.
I'm scared.
Actually, it should be going down Dunbar because that's the truck route.
Right.
And we understand La Pleasance because they come straight across and then they come down to 6th Street and they're at the 5 intersections there. And they either going to turn right and come to Scott right to the downtown, which they're passing through. Local trucks have the ability to travel through the city. We know that. But if it's trucks that are, I'll say, commercial trucking that has no business in the city, there's designated truck routes they're supposed to take. And when they get off that, because they still think M50's there and it's not. They follow their phones and GPS, and it just doesn't really say what's accurate today. So I think Dunbar is the route that trucks should be going, but it's in the township. We can't regulate that. If they come down La Pleasance and they're not coming in for business in the city, how do we best want to direct them to get to the main roads?
Let's push them down.
Now, we also know that intersection at South Monroe Street is also across the road is Kroger's. So, there's, we have to, that's part of that traffic analysis and study that will have to be done when we talk about this, if council wishes to move forward. But right now, it's just want to give the overview of the results of the planning grant. We have an item on the agenda later for council actions consideration is regarding, are we prepared to go at least have a engineering analysis done? Other questions? Maybe we'll have questions later on the council action. But I think I just haven't sat on that obviously with the manager and with Patrick. I do want to say that, it was a good discussion. I think it was, how do we make the entire La Pleasance Road better for all? Regardless whether it's in Monroe Township or the city, or even going out to Bowles Harbor. And how do we get people that if they want to get and can safely maneuver in a non-motorized fashion and want to go out to the park in Bowles Harbor at the entrance to where Lake Erie is and sit, and that we should, this is what these type of funding and grants are available for. Patrick.
No, that's it. She was using my computer, so I figured
Okay.
I'd trade out, let Mr. Vanasacker
Any
go
other
next.
questions for Lucy or even Florence?
As Mayor Clark indicated, we do have an agenda item on the regular meeting that I expect I would probably introduce that as well too. So
I just want to say thanks to not only the committee, and most aren't here, but also Lucy and Mannequin Smith for the information, but the direction from Florence Buchanan. Without Florence, who is excellent at managing discussions and facilitating, kept moving along, kept on timelines, and as well as that, it kept us focused on what was the purpose for the planning assistance grant. And I think we used the funding well. So thank you both. Okay. Manager Robinson, I think the next is the residential housing strategy roadmap.
Yes, Your Honor. Deputy Director of Economic Development and Community Development, Matt Vanasacker, will present the roadmap for the next steps. We did a larger presentation earlier when we received the study, and now we're mapping out our steps going forward, and this is our opportunity to show that to you, and Matt is ready to do that.
Welcome, Matt.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, Clerk Treasurer Lavoy, Matt Vanasacker, Deputy Director of Economic and Community Development and Neighborhood Services Coordinator for the City of Monroe. I figured I've thrown a lot of PowerPoint presentations at you lately, so I decided to switch it up a little bit and go into Gantt chart form. And I'll send this out in a way that's able to be comprehended easily and send that out to everyone. But for the purposes of the discussion today as the roadmap, I thought that this was probably the best way to go about it. So before you, and what I'll do is I'll zoom in a little bit more, but just to kind of give you the scope. This is looking at September 1st of this year all the way through August of 2025. So about a year's worth of time and actions within the residential housing strategy. There are certain items that will go that should be completed within this time frame. Then there's other items that were mentioned in the strategy that were a little bit more long-term goals. So we'll see some additional actions added to this chart later. The idea behind this is to evaluate it every 6 months, see where the progress has been made, potentially bring this back before you all at various work sessions, just to show where we started, where we've gone, and how far we've come, and where we still need to work on certain items. So as you note, the first thing, we have all 8 items listed based on priority. And we have them all into different phases, 1 through 4, based on the months that we expect some of these items to be completed. This prioritization was taken from the comments and feedback from the last work session. So if there's any questions on the prioritization, we could definitely make some changes and amendments to that. But this is kind of what helped guide the thought process moving forward. So we'll start with zoning. And as you can see, the first item is actually on the agenda tonight to approve the service agreement with C2G for the zoning code updates. We did receive a grant for that. So that's one of those pieces of low-hanging fruit that we were talking about during the last session. From there, you could see action items all the way out through April of 2025, the last week of April. Since zoning code, requires a lot of different public hearings, approvals, both from the Citizens Planning Commission recommendation standpoint, and then ultimately bringing that to City Council, we feel these dates are pretty accurate in terms of when we can expect that based on that service agreement with C2G. So a lot of evaluation will be taking place over the next probably 2-3 months in terms of specifics, what we're looking at updating. And then ultimately, once all of that gets fleshed out and brought into the form within our zoning code, we'll have that for your review and approval. But just wanted to break down some of those steps. We've already begun some of the research on suggested updates that were outlined in the strategy, but still quite a bit more work, especially with our partners at C2G on that moving forward. The second item, neighborhood enterprise zone, this came up quite a bit. I think just about every single person on council mentioned neighborhood enterprise zone during our last work session. And it's really twofold. There's the existing 2 sections of the neighborhood enterprise zone that we are looking to reinvigorate, bring new life to, market, send out publications about, so on and so forth. But then there's also the rollout of a new NEZ that was proposed in the plan north of the River Raisin. So talking a little bit about that, it'll take a little bit to see what updates and amendments, what legally we have to do in order to crack open that program and add new items to it. So that accounts for that in this time. So. And as you could see, the first item's really the main one that we've had action on so far, about 30% in the evaluation of the NEZ program itself, and looking and starting to establish that communication plan, marketing rollout. Those are some of the things that I think are going to be very important when we look at this. Third is redevelopment. So assess rehabilitation and then also infill development opportunities. This is the one we've had quite a bit of conversation on over the past few years. So this is one of those items that's already been in the works. So that's why you see some of the percentages there are getting a little bit higher in terms of some of those items. But really assessing, working with partners, and this will come up in the next item, but working with partners, identifying sites that they may have that they're looking for more specific planning efforts around, and if we're going after some additional sources of funding to help get some of those projects off the ground, kind of pairing all of that together. If I can find my cursor. Next item, Monroe Housing Forum. So this was really that stakeholder group session. Bringing together, we established a pretty good list of stakeholders when we did the initial strategy, getting the word out there, getting feedback from a lot of the different groups. But this is really the area where we convene, see if this group thinks that we're heading in the right direction, if there's anything that they're seeing as they're working in these areas on a day-to-day basis that really makes sense to go after, and things that they're seeing with in-field experience with residential housing. So plan to convene a first session here before the end of the year in Q4, and then work to convene a second session between Q2 and 3 of 2025. Goal is to bring that group together probably biannually, and try to evaluate, see if there's any new trends that they're seeing based on market standards, et cetera. Rental property inspection, this came up as well. Evaluating our current program, seeing if there's anything that we can do to expand the program, see what resources we may need to allocate to expand that program as well. So this is one, since we have a program in place, there's not a ton of specific action based on the strategy itself and what the recommended strategies were in the plan. It's really just that evaluation of the current program. So as you can see, there's already some progress that's been made on that, but really reviewing, discussing with the team, and trying to figure out a roadmap moving forward in that regard. Seven is financing. This is a fairly new avenue. It's when you really looked at that portion within the strategy itself, it talked about creating the partnerships with local lenders, which we do have great partnerships with our local lenders here in town, but really kind of formalizing some financing programs that we can offer up to whether it be first-time home buyers or people that are looking to move into the area. And start convening some of those sessions. Those will also be people that participate in the housing forum as well. So setting that framework and then moving forward and actually creating some of those programs will be a huge benefit. And then also talking too about just evaluation of additional financing programs that are out there, whether it be from MISHDA, additional incentives, that sort of thing. Definitely good items there. I do want to go back because I see I missed, I believe it was section 5. This was the one that talked about specific census tracts for targeted code enforcement, but then also looking at Neighborhood Improvement Act for some of those areas. So creating a property inventory of whether it be blighted properties. We have a lot of that data already. It's just more so centralizing some of it and putting it to work within the framework of the plan itself. Oh, and then also too, I wanted to touch on the targeting code enforcement. We actually are able to utilize some of our CDBG dollars to go toward targeted code enforcement as well. So we are actually in the process of amending, and Caitlin McBriarty, she does a great job, but she's looking at amending some of our process and procedures on code enforcement to see how we can be capturing some of those CDBG dollars and taking it away from general fund. So we're really, really excited about that and trying to spend down our CDBG allocation. And then last but not least, historic district. So looking at the historic district commission, looking at the additional ways that we can utilize that commission in terms of bringing historic properties back into good standing, providing some incentive for homeowners that do have historic properties to do some projects within their homes and exterior wise. Meeting Department of Interior standards, but seeing how we can really leverage the HDC more and bring them more into the fold as we start to have some of these conversations about bringing some of our existing housing back into good standing. So with that, those are the 8 priority areas. A really quick kind of run through on those. From there, I just wanted to make sure that this was a good direction to be moving forward in. If there's anything just base level that you saw or didn't see that you think would be a good item to add, and whether we loop it in under one of those 8 or if we create a separate category for it. And like I said, I'll send these out, the specific action items, to all of you, so that way you have some time to review them. But Mayor Clark, I guess if there's any other comments or questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Sure. Any questions right off from council members? I'll start with a comment and then see if there's others. So as you went through these items 1 through 8, and I was thinking about, obviously we've talked about as a council, the zoning, we identified that there are needs of types of housing that's not currently within our zoning from all aspects, and how we have to make that broader and also manageable to within how we zone our entire community. So I understand. I think that came out of our discussion. I think pretty much on everybody in council to recognize that's the start point. But when I look through a couple of these, and I know there's a timeline and dates and stuff that are on there, but there may be opportunities for some of these that might start a discussion that without getting things too, I'll say, jumbled. Probably not the right word, but my thought is, because there'll be inquiries, and how do we incorporate those instead of just saying, well, you got to wait a year. I think that that might actually help us as we go through a couple things. I'm not saying establishing a as you're going down here, I think with the forums and stuff like that, but it may be, I don't even know what to call it, but a community opportunity, as it's about that communication from start to the finish. One of the items that I kind of put into that, the neighborhood enterprise zone, which we currently have, we have 2 districts, and you stated how we're looking at the possibility of a third. So just for, and ask this because I think I know the answer, but also I'm getting inquiries from these conversations we had about the existing NAZ. So the NAZ that we currently have remains in effect, correct?
Correct.
So somebody that does the rehabilitation and meets the parameters of what, one, in the zone, and two, the improvements, can submit an application and come to the city, correct?
Correct.
And I think we've chatted that together in council as well as had input that we obviously need to have our role in that aspect, because trying to hand somebody paperwork and say, and send it off the state and let them know how it goes, that's not what we do.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a way to get those, we have not many head takers, but I think we're going to have those before we really move forward of the, you know, the reactivation of the program and making it and marketing it. So I think some people are listening. I saw people, a couple with, or took advantage of the permits to get things done, and they're doing that and getting it back in, so they get the return on the cost of the permit. And they're asking also, will there be a second opportunity? That's I digress, I guess. But so that's just an example of NEZ, and I think we're going to see some applications before we get that far down the line. So I guess my message has been, if you have it, submit it. It's still in effect. And as we amend it, we'll make sure we notify the public about that. That's correct?
Yep. I believe there's a 15-year lifespan on once you initiate the program, then after 15 years, you have the option to re-up for the program. So I think that's coming up within the next 2 years, probably, for our 2 existing.
Yeah, okay.
But then adding, of course, the new one.
So if somebody has an interest, they probably should, in the process of finishing,
Absolutely.
they should make sure, of course, through the building department, they have the records and that, so they should follow up within those 2 years. So
Absolutely.
I just think that there's, and the benefit, as we know, and some know, but if they don't, is if you do an NEZ and you submit the paperwork, you know, obviously when you do improvements, you know, your value of your home increases and has a taxable value. I don't recall exactly the years, but it's allow for that their taxes to remain static where it currently is over a period of years before the increase kind of kicks in. So it gives them some of that benefit within immediate, not, you know, do work, spend money, do work, and then your taxes go up. The whole purpose of the program is to let you drift through the years and then, you know, catch up, so to speak, if it's cost issue for some. So, questions? I went on far enough.
Yeah.
Yes, Kelly.
Hello. Could you explain to me what is targeted code enforcement as
Yes.
opposed to what we currently have?
Yep. So within the residential housing strategy, there were certain census tracts that were identified all across the city, north, south, east, and west, for specific areas where we see increased numbers of blight citations. So that is saying that they were recommending in the strategy utilizing some of the resources that we have at our disposal, whether they be CDBG or whether they be our standard kind of code enforcement procedures, to focus on those areas with our efforts, as opposed to going out and finding additional areas, but spending the majority of time in the areas that were identified.
I guess I think about, I would say Census Tract 8318, for example. It's a low income census tract. The burden on the homeowners and the homeowners putting a burden possibly off on the renters, and I just get a little nervous when I hear, oh, we're going to target even more, because I think that might be the most targeted. I feel like I read that somewhere. I kind of thought that anyway, but I feel like I recently read that. So I've always said this, like, what kind of things can we think about that will help individuals, because blight can be for varying reasons. It could be income related or other reasons. We've seen all kind of reasons for it, but just to be more of a burden on the residents, I worry about that, and then I worry about demolition being the answer to everything. Is it? I never thought so, but I mean, so that's why I was asking about what did that mean, targeted?
Yep. Yeah, I think it's really it's a multiple tier approach, and I think every time that there is a citation or anything like that, we don't want to get to that point. So everything that we do with our code enforcement officers is trying to get to that point of remedy before it gets to that point of citation. And demolition, absolutely the last option that we want to exercise, right? I think really looking at, as part of this ability to utilize CDBG dollars, that sort of thing, it allows our code enforcement officers more time to spend having those conversations with people that are maybe possibly struggling, or if they have certain items that are coming up that, whether it's, maybe like one month where it's a really hard month for this property owner and they're having a hard time keeping their grass in check, that sort of thing. Or if it's a problem like siding, if siding's falling off the house and it's a larger expense. It's having that conversation with them, hearing their story, and then seeing if there is a program that we could match them with to help ease some of that burden. I think a great example is the neighborhood enhancement program right now, which we have out. We have about 6 interested parties in that so far, and a lot of those have come from conversations with our code enforcement officials. So,
Sure.
The Monroe Housing Forum.
yeah,
I was curious, like, who these stakeholders will be, and like what backgrounds
yeah.
will they come from? I think we may have talked about it a little bit, but
Yeah.
I can't recall.
Yep. Yeah. Great question. So it'll obviously involve us within the city, but also looking at lending institutions. So, mortgage lenders, that sort of thing, where they're seeing a lot of that activity happen. Realtors, individual, looking at different areas throughout the city, realtors working within the city. Those are probably the 2 main areas. It'll be some landlords, it'll be some property owners individually, and really bringing in and really having that group be the sounding board for ideas that we come up with. Some of the ideas obviously outlined in the strategy, but as we know, we have a certain way that we're going to have to present these items, and making sure that we're doing that in a good way, and making sure that the changes that we're making are ones that are recognized from the community as a whole. So, as opposed to just us getting up here and talking about it.
Thanks, Kelly. Other questions, Andrew?
To follow up with the point that you were making about the housing forum, and you were talking about identifying trends and staying ahead of trends. When you say that, are we referencing specifically consumption trends there, or?
No, not necessarily. I think seeing just, if you're thinking specifically from kind of that realtor mortgage lender standpoint, are they getting an influx of people within a certain age demographic that are coming to them looking for a new home? Are they getting people that are looking for 1 to 2 unit homes? Are they looking to rent versus buy? That sort of thing, which, as we know, can fluctuate from time to time. So I think having that group as that sounding board and hearing what they're looking for, and seeing if we're equalizing that with some of our planning initiatives and some of the sites that we're targeting, I think makes a lot of sense.
Okay. I understand that we're going to be dealing inherently we're going to be dealing with this issue to some extent from a business perspective, from a demand-driven side. I'm sorry, from a supply-driven side, because that's who is in the room. Those are the people who we're dealing with. It's nice that we're getting the perspective from some of the realtors, and as they're talking and sort of feeling out what the view of the broader public is in terms of what homes they're demanding. I think that we're all probably familiar with somebody who lives somewhere where they probably don't want to live, and they're restrained in that either through interest rates or finances or buildings not meeting the amenities that they're looking for. But I'd like to make sort of a demand focus, a consumption focus, a people focus based on what are the houses that people are looking for. I think that in some cases, there's certainly been circumstances that have happened before this board in the past where we've been met by a developer who wants to do a project, and they said, well, we want to do low income, we want to target low income, and we want to do payment in lieu of taxes. And it's like, well, why is that particular? Well, because that's where the tax incentives are. And most of those tax incentives are probably either going to come from us or come from the state. And although the state probably has a reason why they're trying to promote particular sorts of developments, I mean, I'm looking at the very next agenda item where we might not always agree with the position of state officials from time to time. And even when we do, we would like a little bit of independence in terms of making our own decisions for what meets the needs of our community and the people who live here, or in this case, who are trying to live here.
Right.
But I'd like to keep that at least in focus as we begin having some of these discussions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we all recognize, right, that the problems that are facing Traverse City from a housing standpoint are completely different than the issues facing the city of Monroe, and vice versa. There's a different housing challenge in each and every community, and the state does have some blanket programs that try to address all of the different scenarios. But seeing how we here in the city of Monroe can tap into some programs to really benefit the area that we all call home. So definitely appreciate that.
Other questions? Thanks, Matt. I just have one clarification because I usually add this, and I didn't on NEZs. Of course, NEZ is available for home ownership properties, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Modification, rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Appreciate it. And I know you said you would send that out to the council, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'll send the list out
Yeah.
so that way you can see, and then we'll present the Gantt chart from time to time.
Sounds good. Yeah. I think, Andrew, do you have a final comment?
I do, before we wrap up.
Kelly?
Yeah. In the past, that the Housing Commission has done a divestment of their properties that they've had, and I think that in that process, they've preferred they're going from rent to buy, they were selling, they were promoting home ownership, and I think that that's something that historically the sport has been very supportive of, especially giving preference to the families currently living on the property.
Right.
My understanding is that in the past, very few families were either willing or able to take advantage of that preference, and I wonder to what extent that is a financing issue. As we tackle financing as a component of this overall strategy, to what extent is that rent to buy preference in terms of transitioning into home ownership, perhaps in the same property that you're living in now? What's that look like?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely continue to explore that specifically. I think a lot of the financing programs that are available right now, and ones that we're seeing examples of from other communities, definitely incentivize home ownership versus rental. But that being said, I think more so are rental incentives on the developer side when you're talking about financing options, that sort of thing. But we'll explore both of those options with the lending partners and with the various state agencies. We had a conversation recently with a workforce housing developer, and they were interested looking at a pilot, but the pilot funds would be used to incentivize the renters to acquire units within their structure. And there's certain time periods that elements have to be remain either rental versus own and that sort of thing. But it's definitely, it's going to be a lengthy conversation with the financial partners.
Kelly?
You brought up or somebody brought up the NEZ. I was thinking about what I consider some of the constraints on the NEZ, like in the East plan, for example. If it's my recollection, because I was on the planning commission at the time when this was coming to be, you needed to have owner occupied with commercial on the bottom and residential on the top. Which I don't know all the boundaries, but a lot of those buildings have been torn down.
Right.
So if somebody was to take advantage of that, it would probably have to be like a new build or something. And then I think the focus for the West plan was to encourage more single family, not so much of the multi home. And so I'm wondering, I might be wrong, I'm paraphrasing all this, but some of those constraints, if we're going to be taking a new look at the plan, at the NEZ,
Yeah, absolutely.
that we think about some of those things that could be constraining to be able to use the program.
Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely don't want to create additional constraints for people to be able to utilize this. I mean, ultimately, the goal is to create sustainable, housing solutions, right? And whether that's a rehab of an existing single family property, I don't think it has to be a commercial use within the building. I think that's more so one of the elements that can be utilized through the program. But you can also pair that with some other commercial programs as well. So I think it's got a wide scope, and maybe I mean I can't speak for the initial when it came about, but I think that there's some additional options that we have in terms of the breadth of the program that we can really capitalize on.
That's been
Yeah.
about 13 years.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, Kelly, you are correct. There was discussion about how we wanted people that had commercial to have commercial on the first floor and residential on the second. That came around the same time when the NEZ came around. The NEZ is primarily for residential homes. But the conversation was, how do we also make residential homes when it's available, whether it be in a downtown or elsewhere that maybe has a first floor commercial, that how we were supportive of putting residential above, because it gives that flavor in which it has. And so it allows, whether they're owned by the person or renting, it gives that ability. So you're not off by knowing that conversation, but the NEZ is primarily for a homeowner of a residence that does work, and the work is minimal that needs to be done, but also that's minimal how your taxable value may increase. And one person that talked to me, they're doing a complete rebuild of their front porch and putting windows in on the front. So it's a significant cost, but of course, as soon as that's done, they're going to get assessed based off the new work, and therefore then they have the ability to do this process I told him, I said, and as long as he's within the current zone.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
Andrew, you're reminding me of on the finance side, and I know we hear of things that are coming out, whether it be other locations, some are local, mostly it's state, and the potential as being discussed in Lansing and elsewhere about, and even federal, I think I could be wrong there, first-time home buyers, a fund that's being established for that to get people past that, maybe that push part of they can maintain it, but they can't get there to get the down payment. They can't get there to make the purchase. And I understand that there's a lot of discussion right now at state level and beyond about how, I don't know how that's going to be rolled out. I don't know what the foundation is, but that's something, Matt, as I think about as we're putting this finance package together, and I know it's in I think I saw something like that in one of those bullet points there, was about first-time home buyers and how there's avenues of funding that may be available, and how do we incorporate that, as you're talking about, Andrews, into what we're doing and make sure that those are available. and we don't miss that on a possibility for ownership.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Other comments? I know we have one more item. Thanks much, Matt. Appreciate it. Manager Robinson, we have one more item.
Your Honor and Council, we have the discussion on the Public Act 233 of 2033 about the renewable energy facility siting legislation. And Director Cochran will address and update where we're looking at working on our own ordinance in response.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council. Boy, that was a mouthful, wasn't it? I want to first thank Matt. I was really impressed and blown away Friday when he showed me the chart that he had come up with that shows accountability. I hope that it's a demonstration that we take seriously, both our accountability to the council, but also the public, that some of the studies and the reports that we do and the master plans that we do aren't just sitting on a shelf collecting dust. That I think is evidence of work in progress and trying to figure out how we begin to implement these things and our accountability to you to make sure that we're reporting back to you on the progress that's being made. So really proud of Matt for an excellent tool that he's developed, both to carry that forward as well as reporting back to you. But I will be relatively brief tonight because it's ultimately a sneak peek of coming attractions. As City Manager Robinson indicated, Public Act 233 of 2023 was signed into law by Governor Whitmer on November 28th of last year. The reason we're bringing this tonight is because we are up against a deadline in preparing for the effective date of this new act that was signed, which takes effect at the end of November in this year. And so we have some preparation work that we need to do here at the city to prepare for when this act takes effect. But in essence, you've probably heard a little bit about this through the Michigan Municipal League, SEMCOG, and other partners who really worked hard to advocate on behalf of local units of government with this act and the implications that it would have on us. But essentially what this act does is creates a set of statewide standards, Councilman Felder, to your point, in the previous discussion, a set of statewide siting standards for renewable energy products, including solar, wind, and battery storage facilities for every community across the state of Michigan. Really what it does is it preempts our local authority and our ability to regulate these through our typical zoning code. What it does, the standards the city is required to meet, and then it sets in place policies and procedures that renewable energy providers can follow if the city doesn't act, or if we set stricter standards, or if we deny an application that comes before the city. So you'll see it applies to larger projects, and Attorney Buds and I were working on this presentation, this discussion for you this evening. It's very rare, given the size of the applicability of these projects, that we may be met with an instance such as this, but we feel it's better to be proactive rather than reactive in the case that something like this were to ever come. But you'll see it's generally solar projects with 50 megawatts or greater, wind project or energy storage with 100 megawatts or greater, or wind projects with 50 megawatts or more. Anything smaller than that would still be applicable to our existing zoning code that we have right now that does regulate these things, although we will be taking a look at that as part of this. But in essence, what happens if a utility company wants to build a facility that meets that criteria? What they have to do, and the process that they would follow, is notify the clerk that they're getting ready to host a public hearing 60 days in advance of their intent to file a permit, notify the clerk, and then reach out to the mayor that they intend to apply for this to find out if we have a local ordinance that is compatible with the state regulations. If we confirm that we have an ordinance that meets the criteria as laid out in Act 233, they can file a permit with us, and we have a certain time period in which we must have to act to review that. If we do not have an ordinance that's applicable or compatible with the state law, then they go ahead and file directly with the Michigan Public Service Commission, and they handle the permitting regardless of the city's existing ordinances. And so the city, if we get notice, we have 120 days to act on that. The public hearing has to be hosted by the utility company. The clerk is required to be notified of where, when, and also have the site plan available for public viewing, and that the public is aware that one of these is proposed in our community. And then if we do not act within 120 days, it automatically goes to the Michigan Public Service Commission. We do have the ability to agree to extend that deadline by 120 days, but it must be mutually agreed upon, which means we must approve that as well as the utility company. I mentioned they have to have a public hearing, 30 days notice to the clerk, but 60 days before that, the utility shall offer, they don't have to, but they shall offer to meet with the chief elected official of each affected local government unit. And at that point, once we receive notice in that offer, we have to respond whether we have, it's called a CREO, a Compatible Renewable Energy Ordinance, whether we do or we don't. And at that point, the utility company decides where they want to apply to. If we confirm that we have a CREO in place, at that point, we are not allowed to amend it, that it must remain in effect during the review period. And if we approve a permit in a site plan for a renewable energy development, then construction must begin within 5 years. Those are the requirements that the state has set on us. If the local unit of government denies the application or we fail to act, then the Public Service Commission then takes over. If we don't have a CREO, then the developer can apply directly to the Public Service Commission. The commission has to review the application within 60 days for completeness, and within 1 year, they either have to approve or deny the application. Some of the criteria that the Public Service Commission has to consider is the impact on local land use, but they do not have the authority to limit the overall land use that can be utilized in a local unit of government. So they look at the impact, but they're not allowed to limit the amount of permits that can be issued in a local unit of government. And I'm not going to go through this, but these are the requirements that the state sets forward. So our ordinance that we ultimately end up adopting cannot be more restrictive than this. So for example, a solar array has to be at least 300 feet setback from an occupied community building or dwelling on a non-participating property or a neighboring property. We cannot make anything more restrictive than that. 50 feet from a public road right away, we would not have the ability to say it has to be 60 feet or 55 feet or 100 feet from the public right away. Same thing for a property line from a non-participating party, a maximum height of 25 feet. We can't say a maximum height of 15 feet. Sets the maximum noise level, and fencing has to comply with the stated code. Lighting solutions is described in the act as well. And so they do this for both wind, solar, and energy storage. Again, I'm not going to go through this, but we are not allowed to be more restrictive in our ordinance. So one of the things that it does require is a one-time $2,000 per megawatt payment provided to the local unit of government to recoup costs like public safety and infrastructure purposes. However, they have to agree how we're going to spend that money. And if we don't agree to that, then they can go find another community agency to give that money to. And so a lot of mutual benefit or mutual agreement is included in the ordinance. And so one of the things, what we're getting ready to do, that's just an overview, what we recommend is for City Council to consider CREO, a Compatible Renewable Energy Ordinance. We haven't drafted it yet. There's some examples from across the state Attorney Buds and I are looking at to bring back before you. But the rush, the deadline that we have to meet is to make sure that something is in effect by the time that the state law goes into effect. And so it's our intent to bring a draft at the work session on September 3rd of an ordinance to walk through with you. And then schedule have the first reading and schedule a public hearing on September 16th. And then October 21st, hold the public hearing, the second reading and adoption that would go into effect then in November 10th, which would be in time for the November 29th council meeting. So I don't have any draft language for you this evening to look at, but just know our ordinance cannot be more restrictive than what the state has already set. We can add some language such as fees for review and other items that we'll be taking a look at. So more to come, but wanted to give council a heads up and see if you had any questions that we can address this evening.
Andrew?
For scale, how big is a 50 megawatt solar array?
500 acres, roundabout.
Your Honor, from I will say, I don't remember the exact acreage. I want to say more than 250 was the number that stuck in my mind, such that there are limited parcels in the city of Monroe that would be subject to this. That's the takeaway, essentially, for solar. Now, the one that probably of all of these is the most likely is battery storage, needs a smaller footprint, can be subject to these as well.
So the two follow-up questions that I would have is, does this allow for, it says 100, wind projects, 100 megawatts and over. Does it allow for offshore wind? Would this apply to us? How far out does our jurisdiction go? And then second of all, regarding battery storage, which, as the attorney said, probably is the most applicable here in our community. Well, I don't know where to take that question, but
Yeah.
We all sort of know where that's going. But and what is the impact then to the city, and then how do we construct a framework around this? Because we all know that these projects really aren't targeted for urban settings. I mean, if anything, we're doing rooftop solar, which isn't going to touch the requirements on the scale of what these guys are talking about.
The offshore wind is going to fall under a lot of different jurisdiction than just the city. I'm not sure sort of where our responsibilities lie there. But battery storage is probably the one that we're looking at the most. Certainly, we don't have a whole lot of tracks, as Attorney Buds indicated, 250 acres or more. And this it's not something that's as prevalent for us as for a lot of other urban or rural communities. But it's still something we just want to be prepared for and have something in place should the day ever arrive. So.
So I think there are probably some urban communities that have gone through some, long-term revitalization that have obtained acreage. So if it's owned by the municipality or township, can they simply say, do they have the ability to manage that property by themselves versus saying, well, there's the property, we're going to put it there? Yeah, they have to own the property, correct?
Yeah, that's a good point, Mayor. This is applicable only for willing seller type situations. This isn't where a utility company can come tell the city that they're going to build a solar array at Custer Airport and take it over. If the city were to ever decide to sell for a purpose such as this or relinquish land for something like this, it would have to follow this ordinance.
Great question on the offshore, but I think, we don't have much of a shoreline for the city because it's to the port or it's where the currently DT is, and even part of that's in Frenchtown, so.
Yeah, Monroe Township.
I can't think of they'd be placing things at the entrance of a port, but you never know. So I think it goes back to your earlier comment, independence for decision-making locally.
Yeah.
Councilman, so thank you. Other comments? We have about 11 minutes, but go ahead, Andrew.
I would just say it's not. I don't think that most of us, I don't think are ideologically opposed necessarily to renewable energy. It's just that given the amount of developable land that we have in terms of taxable value, this is not a taxable value dense property in the same way that the coal burner is. And so I just have my doubts about how viable these projects are in an urban setting.
It's also a discussion of we should be making our own zoning regulations for our own community versus statewide standards that are applicable to everybody, but
100%. I know that there were other options that were available to the legislature when they began discussing this, and I was disappointed that this is the route that they chose.
it may change in the future. I know there's been citizen referendums possibly that could go on the ballot. It's not happening this year, so nonetheless, it's taking effect November 29th, and we just want to make sure we're prepared.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions? If not, we'll adjourn the work session at this time, and we have 10 minutes for the council meeting. Thank you all. Call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Stillgrave? Vining? Jermaine? Lamore?
Excused? I'm here. I ask we all please rise for the invocation, remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Guide us all in our deliberations and discussions this evening. May our efforts promote the good of the residents of the city and all who visit.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, first item, please.
The agenda is the approval of the regular agenda.
Manager Robinson, any adjustments or amendments to the agenda?
We have no adjustments for the agenda.
Thank you. Any comments from council on the agenda? Motion be in order to approve the regular agenda. Councilman Felder. Thank you.
Support.
Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilwoman Stillgrave to approve the regular agenda. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Stillgrave?
Yes.
Vining? Jermaine? Felder?
Yes.
Hayter? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments, the amount should read $940,308.90, 940,308.90.
Thank you. Any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? On the consent agenda, council wishes to have pulled. Seeing none, are there any items on the consent agenda those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? And we have a large crowd this evening, so what that means on the consent agenda, and I usually bring this up once in a while at the meetings, you'll see there's various items on the consent agenda with whether it be scheduling public hearings, housing zone code updates, some wastewater and water items, and tree purchasing and planting. If that's an item you want to speak about, now would be the time to ask to have it pulled. It'll be put at the conclusion of the meeting. And if not, all the items on the consent agenda, those that aren't pulled will be passed in one motion. So I'll ask again, any items on the consent agenda, those present here this evening, wish to have pulled for further discussion? Seeing none, a motion would be in order. Councilman Felder.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that all items on the agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted.
Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Hayter, that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Stillgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Felder? Hayter? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is under presentations, communications, and public hearings. Item 4289, presentation by ALCC Youth, Historical Black College and University Trip.
Thank you. I think we have a lot of people that might want to speak tonight, or some representative. Manager Robinson?
I think Quest, my Director of Economic Development, Mark Cochran, would like to introduce this presentation.
Thank you. Mark?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council. Tonight's a really fun presentation. If you'll remember, I forget what year it was, several years back, there was a group of youth from the ALCC who went on a trip to Washington, D.C. And after that trip, they came and presented to council about how their trip went and the impact it had. And Councilwoman Germaine and I have the pleasure of serving on the advisory council for the Opportunity Center at ALCC. And when the idea about the HBCU college tour came up, we said, it'd be great if you came and presented to City Council, because there was really good feedback, and we knew how much you appreciated hearing about the impact that had on the youth. So this evening, we invited them to come and talk to City Council about what their experience was when they visited Atlanta earlier this month. And so I'll invite Jason Aaron up, or all of us, everybody, up to present on what they experienced and how their trip went in August. So,
And I see someone's going to grab the microphone and make some comments and introductions and talk about this great trip.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. You'll be pleased to know that not everybody is going to be speaking tonight, but everybody is here for moral support. My name is Jason Aaron, and I work as the Youth Programming Director at the Community Center. And it was a great blessing and honor to be able to go with these young people and adults to Atlanta and experience the history that exists there, not only at the HBCUs, but at other locations there in Atlanta. So I want to start by allowing Troy Overstreet, who is going into his senior year at Monroe High School, to share a little bit about his highlights from that trip.
Nice to meet y'all. Troy Overstreet.
Thanks for being here, Troy.
3 things that I found interesting while I was on the trip to Atlanta was, one of them would have to be this picture to the left, which is the fountain for, I think it was a pipe bomb in Atlanta, which was discovered by a security guard, which was stopped. And I think he did 3 to 2 years in prison for it, which was wrongfully in prison for. The jellyfish, that would have to be the aquarium. You know, I don't go to a lot of zoos and stuff, so just seeing new things just inspire me. And the dolphin show was one thing I'd never seen before, so I sat front row with Delmar. Actually, yeah, me and him got splashed pretty good. Yeah, so yeah, but those were 3 things that I found very interesting and fun to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy.
And as you can see, we also were at Morehouse for several hours, which was an incredible experience. Our tour guide was phenomenal. And jokingly, one of the people, the staff that was present there said, "Hey, they got the best tour guide on campus today." And literally, I think that he was. It was like a wealth of information. And so it was very inspirational just to see the many people that have gone to that particular school, the prestige of that school. I think they allow in 900 people and they get roughly 10,000 applicants. And so that just tells you about how small of a group that they take, and everybody that goes is highly respected and really a leader, a future leader. And so next I want to have Lenore come up and share a little bit about her experience. We also went to Lair's Salesforce real quick, which we'll elaborate on. If you can see in the right, the young lady in the white dress, she actually graduated from Monroe High School, class of '89, Robin Montry, is that right? Yes. Yep. And so Aaron knows who she is, and we were able to get kind of a full tour of this state-of-the-art facility. And I know it probably pains some of you to say that, for me to say this, but it is very comparable to Lazy Boy. Now, I think Lazy Boy's a little bit better, right? But it's on the same playing field. It was beautiful. So go ahead, Lenore.
Okay. So I had a lot of fun on the trip. My favorite part had to be the aquarium because we saw all these cool fish and stuff. I saw a giant like whale, but yeah, that was really fun. I saw all my friends get splashed. I wish I was down there. But we also went to the Salesforce Tower that he was talking about. We went all the way to the highest floor, which was scary because I don't do well with heights. But yeah, and like I gotta say, the most emotional part for me was whenever we went to the MLK fountain thing. I like as soon as you walk up all the steps, there's all these different quotes and stuff, and it's like all about nonviolence. I don't know. I almost cried. It was pretty emotional, but it was really fun either way. Yeah, that's it.
Lenore, thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts.
Yeah. The MLK tomb was incredible because it's right beside Ebenezer Baptist, which is where MLK preached. And if you know the story, his mother was actually shot in that church shortly after he passed away. And so there's just so much history in that particular area. And as I was telling the kids, it's just very sobering to be in a place like that where so much turmoil took place. And last but not least, from our students, I will hand the mic over to Delmar Clay, who is going into his senior year of high school.
Hello, I'm Delmar Clay. The first picture, the big picture, that was at, I believe it was called the Centennial Park. And it's probably the most amazing thing I've seen in my life. It's huge, like 4 football fields, maybe 5. It's very big. We didn't get to explore it all because that's how big it was with the time that we had. I wish we had longer, but that's besides the point. But it's not something you see every day, just living in Monroe. And it really just shows you how big the world is compared to this little town of ours. And the top right picture is the splash zone. Is me and Troy coming out of the splash zone, all wet. And that aquarium was also pretty sweet and amazing. Again, not something you see in Monroe or around very often. So that was just something nice to go to and see. And then the bottom right is at Salesforce. That's one of their little mascots. I don't know if it has a name, but you know, oh, okay. Oh yeah, well, technology has been something that I've wanted to go into since I was a kid, and going there kind of gave me a better path to what I want to do outside of high school. And that was just nice to go to. I might want to work there. We'll see. That was it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the things that was so fascinating is that several of the kids came back from that experience saying that they may want to go to college, and not saying that college is for everyone, but just to see the impact that seeing the world actually has had upon them. And I wanted you all to get a chance to hear from Miss Fay. And if you don't know Miss Fay, she in many ways has been the backbone to the community center for a long, long time. I mean, Anthony's been there a long, long time too. Maybe longer than I've been alive, but he may be buried beside the center, you know. But Miss Fay has been there consistently for 25 plus years, investing in the young people. And she's not front and center. She's not getting in front of the microphone, but she does so much for these kids and has for decades and years. And so I thought it was important for her to come share a little bit about her heart and how this experience has shaped her and impacted her and is going to help her in the future. So Miss Fay, if you would please come forward and share a little bit.
Hello.
Hello, Faye.
What I want to say is that I could not have done this without a lot of support. And I want to, first of all, I want to thank my boss, he's not here, that is Manuel Hoskin. I want to also thank Miss Stephanie from MCOP. And I want to thank my sidekick, Anthony. We argue quite a bit. And I want to thank Aaron, because I think 5 years ago, we sit back and say, you know, me, Anthony, and Aaron. So there's things that our kids in our community need to be exposed to. So we came up with the Washington trip, and that went so good. So we decided to go on a college tour, and that was excellent also. Not only did the kids learn anything, I also learned something. I learned when we went to Spelman that it is very hard to get in Spelman. I don't care if you got a 4.0 or whatever, but it takes a lot of work. And and one thing that I did learn there, they have a fountain there that, I don't know if you got that. Mm-hmm. This fountain here, you're never too old to learn. This fountain here is the first fountain that any African American people was able to drink out of. So they put this in their, it's in the middle of their courtyard. So I learned a lot about that. And also when I went to where Martin Luther King spoke, and I had the opportunity to touch the church. That put chills through my body. I was born in the 60s, so there's a lot of things that I experienced as a young person. So my reason for us bringing our kids to see different things, I like for kids to think outside the box. A lot of time they don't have that opportunity to be able to speak outside the box. They probably don't even know what that really means. So by educating people, or educating not only myself but other people, that they get to explore different things in life. So that's my goal. I'm not very much of a speaker, but I speak from my heart. And I really appreciate the mayor for also your support. You've been there twice for us, for supporting us, the Washington and now the ABC trip. Not only that, I hope in the future that we'll be able to explore more and to do more for our kids in our community. My goal in life is to, if I can change one person, one child, one teenager, one young man, one female, that means more than the world to me. So I want to thank you guys for this opportunity.
Thank you, Faye.
Well, on behalf of all the staff and everybody at the community center, we just want to say thank you for all your support for this particular trip and wanting to hear from us. It's encouraging to have the opportunity to share how this was a life transforming experience for many of these young people, and I really appreciate the opportunity to lead them. So, do you all have any questions of any of us or?
Any questions from council? Comments?
Your Honor.
Councilwoman Viney.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm glad you guys enjoyed the trip and got to experience. I spoke with a lot of the young people, and they all told me their different favorite parts of the trip. So I like, not only did you go to the colleges, but you showed them some of the historical sites around Atlanta. And I like the idea of expanding their minds, the travel. I'm proud of you young people, and keep up the good work. And I'm looking forward to you seniors letting me know what's the next step. Will you be applying down there at Morehouse or one of these colleges, or what trade or vocation? Troy and Delmar. So come talk to me about it. I'm proud of all of you. Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other thoughts or comments? I have one, because first off, I think it's such a great opportunity, just as Councilwoman Viney said, when those opportunities present themselves for travel, education, broaden horizons, embrace them, and don't think, well, I don't know if I should do that, or if I don't know if I want to go. If you don't go, then you're going to not miss that opportunity. It may not be the best trip you take, but at least you're going to learn something every time you go and travel. So here in the last couple weeks ago, we had our sister city students that were here from Japan. And one of the last days that I had the opportunity to be with them, we went to the Opportunity Center and showed them the community gardens. Councilwoman Vining joined us, and we had a conversation to say what that is about our community. It happened to be the election day, so of course with Treasurer Lavoie and her opportunity to meet with the students as well, and then see the process that we have on elections. And then the students went in for an art class, and that's when I met Troy. And Troy was there, and he was kind of standing around. I could see he was just like, who are these people, and who is here, and what it might be? And he was there doing his things at the Opportunity Center. So I said, well, come on into the room. Sat there and watched the students do their artwork. And I said, and I shared what the sister city relationship is, where we send 5 students to Japan, and they this year they sent 6 to Monroe, and they're here for a 2-week stay, and they have homestays in Japan with Japanese families, and the students from Japan come here and live with our host families across the county. So, and Jason corrected me, because I said maybe he had the opportunity to go here just before the meeting. And I said, you know, when you're 11th grade or 10th grade, he goes, I'm a 12th grader. I said, we still have the opportunity. We did send a 12th grader this year. Don't ever think that something that's before you isn't an opportunity and not something that you can participate in. For our sister city, you don't have to speak Japanese. The idea is you'll learn the culture and education, and it makes us more worldly when we think about how we get with other not only our own communities, not only in our own country, but other countries. And so Troy, maybe I'll see your application in the spring. And if you need some personal information of one of the students that was there, you can talk to Vanessa Lavender, who was there. And he says, oh yeah, I know her. I said, well, you go talk to her and she'll tell you all about it. And if you have other questions, don't hesitate to call myself or the council members to learn about that opportunity. I'm so glad that as I think back to the Washington, D.C. trip and the opportunity which that presented and all the things that you get to see, and it makes an impact on those students' lives. And now, of course, with the historic Black colleges, universities, that is also equally impressive, and the opportunities to learn not only about the colleges, universities, but I heard a lot of personal items as well that maybe never had the opportunity to see. And like Delmar said, our small community, don't let that hold anybody back, because we have many, many great people, including yourselves, that are here from our community. So thank you for your presentation. Thanks for taking the trip, and I hope the trip has opportunities for others in the future as well.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, Councilwoman Germaini?
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone that planned the trip, because I know there was a lot of heart and soul that went into it and excitement. We got to watch that happen, and you did a great job. And I'm glad y'all got to go.
Yeah. And you got to leave at 4 o'clock in the morning, too. They'll remember that, too, right? All right. If there's nothing further, thank you so much for being here and sharing your stories, not only to the city council, but those that are present here and the community that's watching as we televise our meetings. So thank you. Clerk, the next item, please.
The next item is the Monroe County Library System 90th anniversary.
So I'm going to start. Councilwoman Viney may have a comment as well. And we have a person that's here from the Monroe County Library System. But this evening, we have a proclamation that we're going to be presenting, but not this evening, but a later date, because they're having a special day, which is their 90th anniversary as a Monroe County Library System. And that's going to come in September. And but a couple things I want to talk about the proclamation that we have. When we get requests to do these, and how do we make them to make it not only about an anniversary. An anniversary date comes and it's what's happened in the past 90 years. And there's no way we can put everything in here, but I'm sure I know that as I know it can be received if you had a desire. But you're thinking back to when the library was first established, and then from there how it went through the system of the cornerstone of learning, and why the importance of having a library within your community. And we have two. We have the Dorsch Memorial, and we have the Lillian Stewart Navarre Library as well. And the Dorsch Library, of course, has been here since 1914, when Dr. Dorsch gave his property, his home, to the city for specific reasons for a library. Now, I'll say the Orchard East Library, because it was first identified on multiple different names and in 3 or 4 different locations. But I think one of the significant impacts that many here that will remember, and if not, those are learning, back in 1966, when the Navarre Library was dedicated by Vice President Hubert H. Humphrey, and it brought thousands of people to our community. And that's kind of the milestone of where the library sits today as our library in the Orchard East. Our proclamation speaks about the bookmobile. I'm not going to speak a lot about that. I know it's near and dear to the person that's going to speak and give us some information about the library system. And of course, there's a 5-member board of trustees that have, for years and decades, put service toward improving the library systems, not only in our city, but this is an anniversary or a recommendation, or no, sorry, a ceremony of commemoration of their 90 years throughout the entire county. So I'm going to ask Barb Krieger from the Monroe County Library System. She is the community outreach person, just to say a few words. And I told her, I am not going to give this to you today, because we're looking forward to September 9th, when you have what you can tell everybody about what's going to be happening. and some other items that you wanted to share about the library system. Welcome.
you. Honorable Mayor and City Council members, it is a pleasure to be here this evening with like-minded people who have dedicated their lives to serving our community. It's wonderful to be able to celebrate Monroe County Library System's 90th anniversary with you today. I'm going to talk just briefly about our history, achievements, and the future of the library in our community. 90 years ago, a vision was created where knowledge, imagination, and learning would come together under a unified library system. Back then, the world was a very different place. In 1934, a pound of bacon cost 20 cents, and you could buy a brand new bicycle from Sears for $20. However, some things have not changed. In 1934, you could borrow a book from the library for free, and that holds true today as well. As you know, the library is much more than a repository for books. At this time, patrons can borrow everything from framed art to heirloom seeds, propagated plants. We have fishing poles, traffic cones, yard games were cataloged just in time for graduation season. And the library continues to be a sanctuary for students, such as those that we had the privilege of hearing from earlier today, as they pour over their studies, a gathering place for diverse groups of people to share ideas, a warming and cooling center, and a great place for people who are looking to enrich their lives. We offer a safe place for children to learn about the joy of reading and for adults to pursue lifelong learning. The library's dedication to innovation is also noteworthy. We have embraced technology, providing digital resources and online access that extend beyond our physical walls. Today, the Monroe County Library System offers downloadable books, movies, music, newspapers, audiobooks. We provide access to databases that help patrons do everything from get their GED to start a small business. And we have not, in spite of the developments that we've made, lost sight of our traditional role, which is to enrich the quality of life for all residents by providing free access to informational, educational, and recreational resources. And our community appreciates the varied library services we offer. Thank you for posting the National Community Survey on your website. I appreciate that. According to that 2023 study, across all demographics, I looked at age, gender, ethnicity, length of residence, housing type, and there were some other ones in there as well. Almost 90% of our residents rated library services as either good or excellent. So it's nice to see that the community appreciates the work that we are doing. Our library has adopted through the changing times, from the days of card catalogs to the digital age. We have stuck with our core mission, and we are happy to celebrate our 90th anniversary to not just acknowledge the library's past, but also our future. We're on the brink of exciting new possibilities and partnerships. It is lovely to be here this evening with MCOP. With emerging technologies and evolving community needs, our library is poised to continue the legacy of excellence and relevance. And I believe this is a moment to reaffirm our commitment to support and invest in this invaluable institution. In closing, I would like to extend a heartfelt invitation to each of you personally to stop by any of the 16 branches of your Monroe County Library System on September 9th. Countywide will be holding an open house to celebrate this milestone anniversary. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take those at this time. If not, thank you for your time.
Barb? I know the Councilwoman Vining has something, but before I hand that to her, there's one item that I want to read here because I know Barb worked very hard in how we implemented, and back in 2018, when because of a bequest, the new bookmobile was started. And I'm just going to read this part out of here of the proclamation. It says, whereas the implementation of the bookmobile has expanded the library's outreach capabilities and participation at community events to bring 1,800 books to the most vulnerable populations in the Monroe County region. And that's countywide. I know that when that came to be, there's not an event you can't go to. I don't believe that the Monroe County Library System does not have the bookmobile, and when it's about educational and partnerships. And I see the not just the youth, but the parents and others journey through the bookmobile and are either checking out a book or finding resources they didn't know about. So I think that's one of those items that Barb talked about, how we've changed over the decades. And it's just not just getting a book, but the books are being brought to where that we have greater opportunities for those to read and learn.
We really do strive to meet people where they are.
Absolutely.
And thank you for that. I was not going to toot our own horn in that
Well,
area.
That's what I'm here for, because I think it's fabulous. Councilwoman Viney, I know you have a comment that you'd like to make because within your service as well.
Yes, I just want to thank you for being here this evening. I was excited when I saw both you and the young people on the library and the Opportunity Center on the agenda. So I spoke with you earlier and let you know how excited I was because I knew you would properly articulate and eloquently how great the library is. And I told you I forgot my bookmark, but I found it. So I'm going to save it for council comments, but I'm just going to share later on some more things that people can do at the library. I don't know if you mentioned we have 16 branches in the county. And they're interconnected. So you could be in Bedford and we could have the book in one of our city libraries and you don't have to drive all that far. We'll send it to you. So I get a lot of when patrons come, people from outside of Monroe come into our library system, they are thrilled about this multi-branch system that we have. And I was surprised to learn that a lot of communities do not have that. So just thank you for being here this evening. I appreciate you, Barb.
Also worth noting, I really did try to keep my comments brief because several of you know me personally. I could talk about the library all day, every day. In addition to being 16 branches around the county where you can borrow items through our interloan, we're also part of a statewide cooperative called Melcat, and we also participate in the Woodlands Cooperative Library. So if there's a book that you really have your heart set on, and it's not one of the 575,000 items we have in our collection, but the book you really, really want is in Tequamanon Falls, we'll get that to you for free and deliver it to the library branch that's most convenient to you for free. Because as we're meeting people where they are, we're trying to overcome all of those barriers.
Great.
Thank you.
See you on September 9th.
See you all
And
on
we'll
September
make sure
9th.
information gets to the city council where they can come and participate. There may be giveaways, you just never know, for the community as a whole.
All kinds of fun things at your library.
Thank you, Barb. Thanks for being here. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is information on West 8th Street and Adams traffic.
City Manager Robinson, I know that you collect, as our last meeting, there was a request by the council for information and a review. I know you sent some information. I'm going to turn over to you for comments that you have and then also
Yes, Your
questions you may
Honor,
have.
Council, at the last meeting, as you stated, we had a citizen, Mr. Brooks, again approached council about wondering during the citizen comment section, still asking about having a stop sign at 8th and Adams, requesting that to be a four-way intersection. He basically had three requests. His concerns were about speed. His concerns were about wanting that stop sign and about accidents. So from a prior visit here, we did a pretty elaborate study of that area. Even though he was only specifically asking about the stop sign at 8th and Adams, however, our traffic study that was completed by our engineering department did all of 8th Street, west of Monroe Street, and the information was pretty telling. As well as our speed trailer from our Department of Public Safety was out there between February 29th and March 14th, gathering information for the traffic committee meeting that was scheduled for March 27th. The information that gleaned from our regarding speed first, from our speed trailer results were the average speeds were between 20.46 miles per hour and 21.83. There were nearly 9,000 vehicles that traveled 8th Street during that period of time, during that 15-day period of time. 94.74% of those vehicles were traveling at 25 miles per hour or less. that kind of addressed the speed. When it came down to accidents, there was one accident in 2021, one accident in 2022, one accident in 2023, and there were 2 accidents year-to-date in 2024. Both of them were failed to yield from the stop sign at 8th and Smith and 8th and Adams. And the one accident ended up on the terrace, which I believe was a photograph that one of the people who came here showed that there was that accident. What I'm happy to report is the accident volume is actually low, and there were no fatalities or severe injuries resulting from those accidents. The third request regarding his stop sign, all of this information was presented to the traffic committee on March 27th with the request about the stop signs. And the traffic committee at that point in time recommended that no action be taken based on the data that we had. And I'm presenting that information to you now because now we're in front of council because Mr. Brooks wanted us to look at this again. And we wanted to make sure that the information that was provided to the traffic committee was again presented to you to show what they did. And it is up to the council at this point if you see that there's any other reason not to take the recommendation from the traffic committee to take some action. And if the council feels there's a reason to take action, I'm just asking for direction because should you feel that way, I can definitely put it on an agenda to have further discussion regarding this issue with the council for the September 3rd council meeting.
So, Mr. Robinson, I have one question. Obviously, we received correspondence from the Public Safety Director, Tolstead. As part of our packets, it'll be provided to the clerk as well for the details of that. It'll be part of the record. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I want to make sure that that's presented within the records as well. So as our last meeting, we had our last council meeting, we had a question from Mr. Brooks, and the information is provided to the council. At this time, the council this is a communication we're getting back in the information. And if the council wishes to have any further discussion, you can do that. But also if they wish to consider different action, please get a hold of the city manager if you're thinking there should be a discussion or an action item placed before the council. And maybe a further review by the traffic committee is always a possibility as well. Any comments or questions from the council? Councilman Felder.
Yes, I believe that Mr. Brooks, the last time that we spoke about this issue, detailed some incidents of other minor damage. Are those not classified as accidents, or were those not reported?
Those were actually calls for service.
Okay.
Because he did mention about the property damage at 7 on July 31st. His mirror was damaged. There was not a report filed at that time based from the request of the complainant not to file a report. So there was no actual report, but even when we respond, we still make a call for service, the police department does, in order to document the incident.
And have we been getting an increased amount of documented incidents on that particular block or on that particular street from other residents as well, encountering the same issue?
So far, year to date, we've had several calls for service. Many bikes are in the area of the 500 block. They were unable to locate it when the police arrived, along with a reckless golf cart in the area. Police came to the area, didn't find it. On 318, there was a mirror damage. It was, again, I think it was Mr. Brooks' mirror, and no report was filed at his request. Then we had other calls regarding, these are all the calls for service there. We had about a vehicle doing burnouts on June 7th. Again, we were unable to locate vehicles racing up and down West 8th on June 9th. And he made a request to an officer about the stop sign. The officer told him to contact the traffic committee. And then there was another situation where there was 2 mini bikes almost ran over. I think it refers to Mr. Brooks while he was crossing the street, 500 block of West 8th. Again, when the officers arrived, those vehicles were gone. So that's all of the activity that's happened on that street this year, since January.
There was the past incident that was reported regarding the motorcycle that was excessive speed and as I think was shared at previous meetings. The result was that they did make contact with the rider of the motorcycle who was cited, and his motorcycle was confiscated at that time. So that one, the police did have an opportunity to take action.
Right.
Other questions? Other questions from council members? So when we get these in this fashion, obviously it's not an agenda item, it's not an item for action. We've had a request from a resident. If the council members think that there's further action, please contact the city manager, and we'll work through whether there's an action item on the agenda in the future. And obviously the opportunity to have, if there's new information that this will be, I'd request this gets sent to the traffic committee for their awareness of a record from the Director of Public Safety. And that way it's in the traffic committee's file as well. And in the event that there's information that comes back for the committee to consider. Anything further, Mr. Robinson?
No, Your Honor.
Any further comments from council? Very well. Clerk, next item, please.
Item is under council action, item 4792, Jones, La Pleasance realignment and non-motorized improvements professional services agreement.
City Manager Robinson.
Your Honor and Council, this is precisely what Ms. Fortin presented in her work session. And basically what this is us seeking authorization from council for us to go ahead and have Mannequin Smith start working on the actual design of what she presented of the improvements for this La Pleasance Road corridor, pedestrian, non-motorized path within our city. And this would be something that we're looking for the authorization to do this for the professional services, looking at the professional services proposal, and would start our abilities to be able to submit for a TAP grant to help fund, whether it's the entire process or just the process in the beginning within our city. Did I miss anything, Patrick?
Honorable Mayor and Council, Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. The only thing I wanted to add to that is while the current timeline for the TAP grant is sort of lending itself to the urgency of this request, we had long looked at this. My department has as a desirable project all the way across. The road realignment will be a part of the project, but not necessarily, the roadway sections are not eligible for TAP funding. But we are intending to use our 2026 and 2027 federal funds, pool those together for the roadway portion of this. So now that we have the La Pleasance Road Corridor study done that can guide the vision for the non-motorized segment of this, we feel comfortable moving ahead with the roadway portion of this. So I did want to make that clear that the professional services agreement is not just for the TAP grant piece. It will authorize, your authorization will get that process started. But it will also include things like we talked about, reviewing the need for property acquisition on the two corners, beginning the design for the federal process. And because this is going to be a change in the footprint of the road, that process is a lot more complicated. It involves things like State Historic Preservation Office review, environmental reviews. We don't expect any of those to be a problem, but anytime you move the roadway even 10 feet one way or the other, you have to go through a lot longer process. So this professional services award that's presented for your approval tonight would include the entire project, the complete reconstruction of Jones Avenue from Monroe Street to the Plum Creek Bridge on La Pleasance, and then straightening out that, I don't say straightening out, but connecting the roads in the fashion that Ms. Fortin presented. And that would be that the La Pleasance south leg and Jones west leg would be the through route. teeing off the north part of La Pleasance and Navarre, so that those intersections would be slower speed, and you have to actually deliberately make the turn rather than guiding. Right now, people just go straight up La Pleasance. So I just want to make that known, because I know with the dollar amount involved, that seems like a large figure for just a non-motorized project. It is a comprehensive figure for design of the entire project. So I think, Mr. Robinson, thank you
Yes,
for
that's correct.
allowing me to elaborate.
Before you leave, Patrick, because for those that are here and maybe missed the work session or watching, the presentation was given about the planning assistance grant that we partnered with the Monroe Charter Township, was the Monroe Road Commission, to plan how La Pleasance Road should be revisited regarding non-motorized, as well as traffic safety items. So it extends from the city of Monroe through Monroe Township to Bowles Harbor. But this item is about the city of Monroe's area, but is also joining with, on the one side of the street is Monroe Charter Township along Lake Monroe, I'll call it. So, but so that's one point. The other is, so if we apply for a Transportation Alternative Plan grant, the TAP grants from SEMCOG, one they look for a variety of things is when we submit that is multi-jurisdictional obviously gets a little more consideration, and we'll need to talk to the Monroe Charter Township. So I'm getting to the partnership side of this. I think that's a contact we need to make. Councilman Felder made an inquiry during the work session about the VFW. We'll need to have a conversation with them as well to put in this application rather than just submit it and say we want funding to do the project. We need to have these contacts. All this needs to be done between now and when, if we submit in October, because they accept applications quarterly now. It used to be annually, but now it's quarterly. And then I raised the one intersection, of course, the Restore Habitat for Humanity restores there. It's also at the intersection, so we should have an outreach with them as well, just to let them know what we're doing, what we're thinking of, and then how they may be a role or a partnership for them if there's an impact, as well as our residents can make. I'm sure after we've talked about this at the work session tonight, residents along, whether it be Navarre or La Pleasance, may have inquiries, as well as along Jones Avenue. So I just wanted to speak to those things about the process for the TAP grant. Oh, last thing is, SEMCOG has adjusted some of the eligible activities that can be funded, and one of those now is engineering costs. Now, this is a significant amount, obviously, but I don't think all of that would probably qualify for engineering costs. But they do now recognize that some communities can't even submit a plan because the costs are overwhelming to even get started. So there's parts in here that I think could be easily submitted for requests for funding for some of the engineering costs as a grant was to move forward. And the grants that we've received in the work session, the costs related to this, but of course, as you said, Patrick, that there's other costs when we talk about the road. So I know I'm kind of going on, but I wanted to give that clarity, but also see if there's questions from the council. But if you could just review, because you have it in your fact sheet, the funding where this comes for what you're asking this evening.
I know the summary of that wasn't entirely clear as far as exactly where the funding's coming from.
Well, but there's avenues in which there is funding that you've identified that would, why you're submitting this to the council, because you've looked through the process of how to pay for it.
Yeah, we've looked at this. Basically, I'm requesting the authorization for up to $200,000 to pay for it. And this will be a study that will be, not study, the design process.
Right.
The study's been completed, taking that the next step through the design process for the project. Actually, some of that will be spent in the following fiscal year. We're not going to be done with this until after July 1st of 2025. So some of that will come from, I will request appropriation through the next CIP for the actual city share of the construction costs. So some of it will come from our leftover contingencies. Fortunately, we're far enough along in this year's street program, and we're not quite done, but everything is going fairly well. As you know, I typically ask for around 10%, and 10% on a $2 million street program is $200,000. So provided we haven't spent those contingencies, very shortly, that money will be returning to the local and major street funds for use on other projects. And so the finance director signed off on this. He's reasonably comfortable, as I am, that most of the funding needed for this will come from unused capital projects funds from this year within the street and trails funds, where it's an eligible expense. So that's the primary thing. The actual construction funding, that will be, as I mentioned, assuming we're successful in the TAP grant, and we're very optimistic we will be, because they typically like to try to fund a project per county, and we've been a trendsetter. And I think with the La Pleasance Road corridor proposal that's been put together, I think we show evidence that this can be built. The multi-jurisdictional cooperation, I think they're ready to fund this, but we want to get this in while the iron's hot. We list a construction cost of somewhere south of $2 million, but we don't really know until we get everything formally designed. I mentioned our federal aid funds that we have every year. We have roughly $300,000 in obligational authority that comes to us from the feds for each of those calendar years. We can pool those together by bringing forward 2027 money into 2026, and that would be our intention here. So we would have about $600,000 to play with as our normal federal funds, as well as whatever we were able to get through the TAP grant process, which is probably on the order of $400,000 or $500,000 if we can claim the engineering costs. So we're still looking at a sizable local match for the fiscal year 25-26, but we will make that request for that through the CIP, and that's not an uncommon amount for large federal aid projects like this. I will state again that this has been a project that I've been looking at for 10 years because Jones Avenue keeps getting worse and worse, and this will be fairly transformative because of the impacts on safety, pedestrian accessibility, and traffic calming for the adjacent neighborhoods. So I think this is a big project which has been on our radar for a while, but the acceleration of the La Pleasance corridor process has led us to a place where we want to try to take advantage of the next round of TAP grant funding, and I'm confident that we will get funding in short order. So a little longer answer, Mayor, I'm sorry, but.
Councilwoman Vining, I think you have a comment, and I have another one, but she may be asking what I'm thinking of. He answered it? Okay.
I was just trying to understand, this is for the design but not the actual building. This is just for the design.
That's correct, yes.
The details in the design, if we have that, we, along with other things, we can then submit for the TAP grant and hopefully be successful through SEMCOG. That would cover significant portions of the cost that we've had success, and we know here, not only in the city, but in the county. The Monroe County Loop Trail is just an excellent example of that. Not only does SEMCOG have funding and some federal funding, but then MDOT came in and provided additional funding. So there are avenues in that process with the Regional Review Committee to have that discussion and elevate priorities. And SEMCOG is 7 counties, and they will not, the committee will not send all the projects to one county. They look for each jurisdiction of a county, no matter whether it's a city, township, county, of funding, so they're sharing the funding that SEMCOG is receiving, so make sure it goes over the entire 7-county region. So, and we talk to our partners as well here in the county, because we want everybody to have success in the opportunities when they write grants. You answered my question. It was about the federal funding and the opportunities when that can be combined, but also it's not going to negatively impact our discussions of other federal funding projects that we have, because that's about timing as well. So we keep that in mind as we adjust or align the funding, whether it be federal, local, state, and street funds or local millage funds.
Your Honor, I mean, it may seem, I know it probably seems premature to be talking about a 2026 project, but the federal aid process is long and significant, and that's what we need to get started on as soon as we can to make sure we can hopefully build this in 2026. So that's, I know it seems like I'm coming here with a fairly urgent request out of the blue, but we also we want to try to take advantage of that funding.
If council, I know that we've shared these in the past, the various projects that SEMCOG approves. It's on their website, but if you'd like to have the last round that was approved, just as I'll say an example, we'll be glad to send that along to council as well. Councilman Felder.
Yeah. You might have threw it at us already, but if you did, I missed it. What portion of the planning funds would be, if any, would be reimbursable if we did get the TAP grant?
We're going to look at that. I know Ms. Fortin and I are going to spend quite a bit of time on that because it's not, as Mayor Clark indicated, it's not typically we don't go for design costs as part of our normal federal aid process. And part of that is just because most of our projects, $300,000 doesn't go that far. So we always end up having to overmatch the federal funds as it is. But this being a unique and competitive program where we can put in for the amount that we need, we're going to try to capture the share of that design that's related to the non-motorized components. But some of it's going to depend on what they consider to be appropriate. I mean, I can make the argument that, well, the road doesn't have curbs now, and we need to put curbs in to support what we want to do for on-street bike lanes, so the design for the curbs should be eligible. They may or may not agree as part of the grant submittal. So it's a little fuzzy only because we just don't know what they're going to accept and what they're going to throw out. So I think we've identified, Ms. Fortin identified, we've got 3 different pieces of the city's portion, and we're only looking from Plum Creek north for this particular one. We're not going on the city's part from Plum Creek to Kentucky yet. But I think we're north of 400,000, I think, just for the pieces Jones and La Pleasant. So we're looking at an ask at least around that, but we're going to try to get as creative as we can between now and October when we submit.
Gotcha. If I can expand it a little bit to the larger non-motorized interjurisdictional project that we have going on here. I love that we're working on connecting residential neighborhoods with commercial corridors. That's something I've been advocating for years, as you know. It connects Bulls Harbor to the downtown. I think that's wonderful. And with the grant targeting transportation alternatives and trying to get cars off the road and replace them with something less congestive, that I think that all matches what we're trying to do, as long as it's utilized. My fear here is that that corridor, sections of that corridor, mainly as you get off the highway between that and Jones Avenue, is still, I think, would remain fairly hostile to non-motorized traffic, non-motorized alternatives to all but the most dedicated of cyclists. And I know that to some extent, that's why we're trying to expend these funds, is to alleviate that somewhat. But I do hope that we have in the future some more dedicated funds to a dedicated non-motorized path or trail later on that is off street, or at least additional amenities that would make something like this more palatable or provide some additional relief.
So just a quick response, because with the committee and the city and the township and road commission had this conversation, and that's why they, at least in the plan, and I know we just covered mostly the city's portion in the work session, but the information is there for you also, maybe some of the details. On the La Pleasance Road, which is in Monroe Charter Township, that's designed for an off-road, separated, non-motorized. Because I agree. I mean, there's different traffic there than there is traffic in the city. You're going to get more trucks. You're going to get more. It's a narrow 2-lane at this point. You know, so we went through the whole discussion of what the future may bring there. But the funding in that area, besides the sidewalk on one side, and the non-motorized pathway, which is larger, I think allows that expansion and growth to occur within Monroe Charter Township. But obviously, don't be making those decisions. I don't want to be premature, but I understand that we asked for the presentation this evening because the timing of looking at into October is tomorrow night's meeting with Monroe Charter Township. On their agenda is the presentation that we received tonight as well. So how that might generate in their thought process, that's that partnership and follow-up contact that the manager would have with the supervisor, and saying, you know, what's the appetite within the trustees there to possibly move forward, and then that opens that greater, larger, much larger project, and how that might impact a submission. And again, I'm going to go back to the Monroe County Loop Trail, which was, I mean, from the city out through the township, around the college, over across the river, come back in the other township, back to Munson Park. And that's a project that received, you know, well over $4 million. And then, of course, then the MDOT brought funds in. And so they had a pathway of how to make the match fund work. So it really from a community standpoint, communities, the match was minimal compared to what you might see elsewhere. So in fact, they were recommending, don't send it in pieces. MCOG recommended they submit the entire project. And it became one of the largest projects that year that was funded through SEMCOG for non-motorized was that. So I look at this as that's a possibility, but we have to take the steps of getting along through the city here first and see what the township, road commission, what their future plans are. And I think that, even the county. So I think there's those partnerships and contacts that need to be made between now and can we get to the October? If not, it's another quarter delay. And of course, that then moves you back further by the time you get it all done. And we're talking yet a year later. So I'll stop. That's kind of the review, just how it works on both ends.
I was going to say, we've been talking as a team right now. We're very confident we're getting you a submission for October. That was the whole goal here. So
I think we have to make a decision here first tonight.
I'm
so.
presuming you move forward, we're committed to
Your
getting
thoughts,
it done.
Mr. Lewis, but that's where we're having the dialogue. I think there's another comment from Councilman Feller. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Germaini
I'll
first.
make a motion, but if he has.
Motion, so you take it.
Okay, go ahead, somebody.
Go ahead.
I'll move that the attached professional services proposal for the Jones Avenue reconstruction and intersection improvements be awarded to the Manikin Smith Group in the amount of $189,755, and that a total of $200,000 be encumbered to provide for a 5% contingency, and that the Director of Engineering and Public Services be authorized to execute the agreement on behalf of the city, and that the Finance Director be authorized to make any necessary transfers, including from unused funds in other projects and/or the major street fund, local street fund, or municipal street fund balances.
Motion by Councilman Feller, supported by Councilwoman Germaini on item 4792, the Jones La Pleasance realignment, non-motorized improvements, professional service agreement. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Steelgrave?
Yes.
Vining? Yes. Germaini?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Hayter? Mayor Clark?
Yes. There's a long discussion, but I think it's more than just what's in front of us today, and so I appreciate everybody's time and input. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 4821, authorization to submit grant application to MDNR and resolution of support.
Manager Robinson.
Yes, Your Honor, we're seeking authorization to submit for this grant application for the MDNR and I'd like Director Cochran to explain, and I wish Mr. James would have been here tonight.
Put this on council action this evening. Honorable Mayor, Council. So this is a funding that's available through the Michigan DNR through the Inflation Reduction Act Urban and Community Forestry Program. This has been a great partnership between my office and Director Lewis and our Forestry Division, as well as the Tree Advisory Commission. We're seeking the maximum allowed, which is $225,000, to do infill planting in the southern portions of the city, tree condition analysis inventory. You'll recall, I believe it was about 10 years ago, we had done a tree condition analysis of every tree that was owned by the city, and that information is available in GIS, but we would like to update that as we look toward where the needs are, and the Tree Advisory Commission had recommended that we do a tree master plan. And so, working together, we intend to update the city's master plan next year and have a chapter relative to the tree canopy and tree care in the master plan next year, and this will help feed the information if awarded. But also looking at a design and a planting of an orchard in the Orchard East neighborhood. Of course, I think this is a project that Mr. Elliott James has championed and has been requesting, as well as Councilwoman Vining, to bring orchard trees back to the Orchard East neighborhood. And so we're looking at a master plan for an area within the Orchard East neighborhood to plant and restore an orchard. So those are the three intent and purposes of this grant. Again, $225,000, and there is no local match requirement.
Questions from Mr. Cochran? And I guess for Councilwoman Vining?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, I see Councilman Hayter is probably going to be. No, go ahead. Councilman, you go ahead, because I think he's going to be right behind you here. No.
Oh, you were gonna make it.
Go ahead, Councilman Vining.
Your Honor, I move to grant authorization for the Economic and Community Development Department to submit the 2024 IRA Urban and Community Forestry Grant application and approve the resolution of support.
Support. Motion by Councilman Vine, supported by Councilman Hayter on item 4821, the authorization to submit a grant application to the MDNR and resolution of support. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Steelgrave? Yes. Vining? Yes. Jermaine? Yes. Felder?
Yes.
Hayter?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Last comment, I think of I think staff, and of course, you think you start a tree committee and people say, what the heck are they doing? Why do we have residents want to talk about that? This is a great example where they came together and said, how can we find funding and opportunities to research? So I'll say some of our newer committees and opportunities the residents are willing to participate in is why we get great things like this and yet another grant. So thanks, Mark. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 4818, proposed ordinance 24-005, an ordinance to amend sections in chapter 570 up for its first reading.
Mr. Robinson, any comments on this item? I know we're setting a public hearing in a future date, but just...
I have no comments, but I would like our Director Leroy from our Water Department to give a brief introduction to this item.
Very well.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council. Barry Leroy, Director of Water Wastewater for the City of Monroe. In front of you is the first read of Ordinance 24-005. With our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit at the wastewater plant, we are required with every permit to evaluate the loading for the inflow of sewage coming into the plant. And Department of Eagle, who regulates us, they've required us to also add PFAS and PCB analytes to the evaluation. So it's been about 2 years worth of work, and we received the evaluation with the recommendations. And it was recommended to add PFOS, which is one of the PFAS analytes, and PCBs to establish what are called local limits. And those primarily are from industrial users that discharged effluent to us. So there is one current IPP, industrial pretreatment permit customer, that would likely be affected by this, but we don't want to have a pass-through which jeopardizes the permits for the wastewater plant. So there would likely need to be some type of removal equipment put in at that facility to help meet that limit. So, but this is the first read to establish the ordinance to establish local limit.
So obviously the public hearing and the follow-up that comes back to us, but today that we're looking to set that. But if there's any questions, Mr. Lori's here. If not, we can do those at the upcoming meeting if this is passed by council. Any comments? If not, Councilman Felder.
I know that this is adding PCBs and PFAS, which I think is fine. Do we have any upstream discharges that potentially would have higher levels of phosphates or particulate matter?
When we did the loading analysis, it wasn't recommended to modify our total phosphorus limit or any other type of nutrients. What we have in the established already is adequate for meeting our permit requirements. So no, I don't think is necessary.
Okay.
Other questions? If not, a motion. Councilwoman Germaini.
Thank you, Your Honor. Make a motion, proposed ordinance 24-005, an ordinance to amend sections in chapter 570. Move that proposed ordinance 24-005, an ordinance to amend section 570-26 within chapter 570 of the Monroe Code, be placed on the floor for its first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024.
It's a motion by Councilwoman Germaini, supported by Councilwoman Stalgrave on item 4818, the proposed ordinance 24-005, an ordinance to amend section chapter 570 and set the public hearing and second reading as stated. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Steelgrave? Yes. Vining? Yes. Jermaine?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Hayter? Yes. Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Ordinance 24-005, an ordinance to amend sections 570-26 of Chapter 570 Sewers of the Monroe Code.
Thank you.
I have no other items.
Okay, we'll go next. Next is council comments. It is August. Councilwoman Stilgray.
Thank you, Mayor. So on Saturday night, I was excited to be a judge for the Miss Monroe County pageant. And Alora Russell is our new Miss Monroe County. She's a pretty cool gal. So take the time out to meet her if you see her at events. Also, on Friday is the Opportunity Center End of Summer Bash. They will be having a Touch a Truck event, a teddy bear tent, and they're also giving away school supplies. Then on Sunday, there'll be a Party in the Park event at St. Mary's Park from 12 to 5. We'll be, Tino and Maya will be cooking several hamburgers and hot dogs. We have bounce houses, pony rides, face painting, and a whole lot of other events. So we encourage you to step on out and just enjoy yourself. It'll be 90 degrees that day. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilwoman Vining.
Thank you, Your Honor. I had a question for Patrick about a couple streets, if I may. Mr. Lewis.
If you want to, to the manager, I think if he may have it. If not, he's here. So, what streets would those be?
East Third, between Eastchester and Winchester.
That right.
I know, or I believe it's on a list somewhere, but it's continuously crumbling to pieces. And Wood between Railroad and Elmira, I definitely know is on a list somewhere. And I was just curious, would we be getting to those soon? Or when?
Services. It's a mixed bag on the two of those. Those were both of those projects were identified. You may remember back earlier in the winter we had some, I don't want to say surplus funding, but we had CDBG funding that needed to be spent. And we did try to program Wood Street. We are planning to do Wood Street this year. That was eligible for that CDBG funds that we had carried over. I mentioned earlier the federal funding process. That applies there as well because we have to clear it through HUD, so that involves state historic preservation clearance and environmental clearance. We're still working on those in conjunction with the Economic and Community Development Department, Mr. Cochran's department. So it has been approved. City Council actually approved a change order for that work, but we can't actually have them start until we get those clearances. So Wood Street between Railroad and Elmira is happening this year. Third was our next project we were looking at. That has been surveyed. We have the survey data. We didn't have the funding within the CDBG program to do that yet this year, but it is teed up, if you will. The reason we prioritized that one after Wood Street was because most of the distress you're seeing right now in Third is actually in the parking lanes. There's a seam about 11 feet from the center line where all the distress is, and that's mostly in the parking lanes. So we kind of prioritize that one first. Third is a lot more expensive because we would probably look at doing it from Winchester all the way down to Conant. It's getting in fairly poor condition also between Railroad Street and Conant. So we are actually still evaluating options for how wide the street needs to be as well. I think we've seen that before with a lot of our roadways. That's a 36-foot wide road with parking on both sides that's seldom used. So we are looking at potentially going to a 28-foot wide cross-section in that area, which will lower the costs and hopefully allow that to be included in next year's CIP budget. So that's the status of both of those. And yes, Councilwoman, they are both on our radar, with one of those already having been authorized by the City Council for funding.
I don't like when you always want to make the road smaller, but if you make that road smaller, then you wouldn't even have a parking lane there anymore, would you?
We're not talking about narrowing the part between Winchester and Eastchester. We'd keep that the same. I'm talking about the section from Railroad to Conant, which is basically wide enough for 2 travel lanes and 2 parking lanes, but it's not heavily utilized. So we'd be looking at whether or not we could get away with parking on one side, which would then allow for 2 10-foot lanes and an 8-foot parking lane. So if you look at the percentage saved, we're looking at saving almost between 20 and 25% on the cost of the project. So that helps it go farther. We did the same thing with Conant. which was actually more of a speed control issue. As we've heard, the narrower the street is, the more crowded you are by on-street parking, the slower the speeds are. And so the same thing would be true with Third between Railroad and Conant. By narrowing that up and making it feel a little tighter, we save money and it helps control the speeds better. So nothing's been decided for sure, but that's what I just wanted to enlighten you with what our thought process was.
Yes. Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
So, as we heard about the Monroe County Library System, 90 years of excellence they're celebrating. And I was just talking about the community surveys. This is our second one, and the library is up there. I think we're probably only under the fire department. So people do really love the library system. And I think sometimes a lot of people might think a library is just about going in, checking out a book, or maybe a little study time. But there are literally so many things you can do in the library. And we have this wonderful bookmark that you can pick up at your local library branch that will tell you, do you know these 90 fun things about MCLS? So I'm going to tell you some of the things that you can actually do at our local Monroe County Library System besides just checking out books. So you could get a Michigan Adventure Pass, which would give you discounts all across the state at various attractions and event spaces. You could get notary services for free. You could watch a puppet theater, attend annual blues concert series, which those are probably close to 40 decades we're going on the annual blues concert series. You could vote. Of course, Navarre Branch Library is a polling place. I'm not sure that's the only one in the city that's a polling place. You could reserve or utilize meeting spaces and community rooms, pick up your tax forms, attend story times, attend summer reading programs, visit the bookmobile. We also do outreach services for senior citizens. So if you're homebound and not able to get out to the library and you're a senior, we will bring your items to you. You can use the internet, fax services, photocopy, 3D printing, community gardening, story walks, craft programs, exercise programs. You could sit there and read. We have Civil War roundtables, book clubs. You could explore local history at your local libraries. We have makerspace rooms. You could read the physical newspaper, which I prefer because when you try to read it online, they always try to make you pay for it these days. You could read newspapers online for free if you come into the library branches. You won't be charged those subscription fees. You could participate in our 1,000 books before kindergarten, which will make your reader very proficient by the time they get to kindergarten. One Book, One Community, which is huge across the county. We have a lot of partners with One Book, One Community. Great courses, accelerated reader book finders, annual Writers on the Rivers program, chess clubs. You could convert your VHS tapes to DVD. You could, for those of us, from 80s and before we have those old tapes with our family movies and stuff, you could get them preserved onto a DVD at the local library. You could do puzzles. You could use a laminator. You could use a die cutter. You could use a Cricut. Things you could borrow at the library. We just recently had our Library of Things come online. So you could borrow American Girl dolls, traffic cones, fishing poles, cake pans, physical books, ebooks, magazines, e-magazines, framed art, seeds to plant your garden, a plant library, CDs, stream music, movies on DVD, stream movies, TV series on DVD, stream your TV shows. You could still get books on CD. You could stream audio books. You can get pickleball paddles that you could then take down to the new Father Karn's pickleball courts and play pickleball. You could get garden beds, astronomy. You could do astronomy by not binoculars, things I don't even know what they are, Sphero Mini, activity kits, book club kits, classroom kits, Vox books, which are wonderful for teaching early readers because they read along. There's an actual reader connected to the books. Get those for your young people. It'll help improve literacy. You could borrow laptops, maps, and tools. And finally, things you could learn at the library, you could learn through using our vast microfilm system. We have a top-notch genealogy, research genealogy program. It's free. If you want to learn your family lineage, go down to the local library. You could do ACT test prep, ASVAB military test prep, GED prep, driver's education test prep. We have tutor.com where you could get tutored in all types of reading, math, and arithmetic. The word is escaping me. You could learn different languages. We have a General George Custer collection down at the Dorsch Library. We have a business resource center, foundation directory online, Pebble Go, consumer reports, technology assistance, automotive repair resources, reference solutions, Weiss Financial Rating Series online, Birds of the World, Mailcat, teachers cards. We are a fine-friendly library, so we do not charge you late fees. Federal Depository Library, Biblio Board, which is great for all of our students, young and old, and you could get to meet the wonderful staff at the MCLS. So those are 90 fun things you can do at your local library. And that's all I have for this evening, Your Honor. Thank you.
Councilman Vine. I think I'm going to have to amend the proclamation, say, if all else fails, read the 90 points that the library system provides.
Jeez.
I think that's what you could put there and be done, but it's great history and information. Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Jermaine.
I won't go through 90. I wanted to add to Deb's comment about the ALCC. Get there early because last year the line was around the block. The Touch a Truck is great. The kids love it. They can honk the horn. We're going to have a bus there. They can pretend to drive the bus. Also, I wanted to congratulate the kids that took that trip to Atlanta because without that trip, they would probably not experience what they got to experience and learn what they got to learn and the camaraderie that they all learned together. I think it's wonderful that they had the experience. Thanks, that's all.
Thank you, Your Honor. Those sort of educational experiences certainly are very enriching, and I love that we always take every opportunity to support the education of our community's children. That's all I have.
Councilman Hayter.
Thank you, Honor. So I wanted to congratulate the library on their 90th year. And I want to talk about the one thing that Kelly forgot to mention. I represent probably upwards of 1,500 members here in the state of Michigan. And in the construction industry now, you got to have a lot of online training. And if it wasn't for the library system, a lot of these guys and ladies would have trouble finding jobs. It is certainly an asset to our members, and we appreciate you. And then I look forward to seeing everybody on Sunday at the event over at St. Mary's Park. And on August 31st, the Monroe Lenawee AFL-CIO will be hosting the Labor Day Parade. It starts at noon. And then immediately after 1 o'clock at St. Mary's Park, we'll be having Labor Day Fest with food trucks, bands until 10, beer tent, and plenty of activities for the kids, face painters, clowns. I think Bluey's going to be there, Elsa, I think maybe even Spider-Man. So come out and enjoy yourself. And that's it. Thank you.
Just have a couple quick comments. First, I want to thank all those from our community and the community surrounding that came out for our river raising clean up. I think it was a great turnout. Thanks to Amias for some of the food service was provided, and Nocturnal for the coffee and other beverages. But it was a great community event, and thanks to all that were able to attend. And it was met new people, and that's one of the great things about it. Just going to follow up to Councilman Hayter on Labor Day, which will be coming before our next meeting. So it's an opportunity not only to come down for the parade and the activities that are happening. No parade. Yes, parade. Yes, and at St. Mary Park. But let's also remember as holidays come, and remember why we have holidays and what they are for. And of course, Labor Day and what that means to all of us, our community, and not just the work product, but also the people of our community that do strive to serve others through their role and their jobs. And come on down and as Councilwoman Stillgrave said as well, the activities that are here in our community for those to join. So those are my comments for this evening. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
Thank you, but I don't have any comments this
Okay.
evening.
Manager Robinson, comments?
I have no comments. I think you guys covered all of them.
Okay, thank you. Next is citizens' comments. If there's comments from those present here this evening, please come state your name and mindful of the rules of the chamber for 3 minutes. If there's comments from those present here this evening. Any comments? Seeing no comments, we are next on our item is to go into closed executive session. And I also want to remind those that are here and watching that our agenda is a little bit different today because after our closed executive session, we're coming back for council action. And it's items that that may or may not come before the council as we return back to the dais here and take action. So those are on our agenda. And I think it's important people know that we know what we're doing. I don't like to come out of closed session and make and everybody leaves and not know what's happening. Or and it will also be available through MPACT as well. At least the items I'm just identifying that are on the council action after the closed session regard to a consideration of engagement of a letter for litigation. And the other is to authorize the human resources to pursue an MOU with collective bargaining units for those that may want to stay or listen as that comes back. So with that, we need a motion to go to close the executive session and the reasons stated. Mike, or Councilman Hayter?
I make a motion that we adjourn to executive session, or I'm sorry, closed session.
And we need the 4 items that are on the list.
And the 4 items are litigation discussion outside council consideration, attorney-client privilege correspondence, property-related legal action, potential property acquisition, and discussion collective bargaining item.
Motion by Councilman Hayter, supported by Councilwoman Stillgrave to go into closed executive session for the purposes stated. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Stillgrave? Yes. Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Hayter?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. And we'll be back.
Pain good, you can't even tell you're in pain.
Are you ready? Thank you. Clerk, ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, I need a motion to go back into,
Motion to
open
go back into open session.
Motion by Councilman Feller, supported by Councilwoman Germaine to go back in open session. Clerk?
Councilperson Stillgrave? Vining? Germaine? Felder? Hayter? Mayor Clark?
Yes. So we have two items on the council agenda that, if there's a desire from council to move forward with those, we'll need a motion on the first, which is item number.
4844.
Clerk, was there anything else? I should have let you do that.
Consideration of engagement letter for litigation.
Okay. Councilman Hayter.
Make a motion to authorize the city attorney to proceed with engagement letter with outside counsel.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Hayter, supported by Councilwoman Stillgrave on item 4844. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Stillgrave? Vining? Germaine? Felder? Hayter? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Clerk, next item.
So the next item would be item 4845, consider authorization to HR to pursue MOUs with collective bargaining units.
And I think we have Councilwoman Stillgrave.
I'll make that motion. Move to authorize the Director of Human Resources to execute the MOUs and plan agreements for the retirement incentive program as discussed.
Motion by Councilwoman Stillgrave, supported by Councilwoman Germaine on item 4845 as stated. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Stillgrave? Vining?
Yes.
Germaine? Felder? Hayter? Mayor Clark?
Yes. If there's no other comments, I need a motion to adjourn. Motion from Councilwoman Germaine, supported by Councilwoman Stillgrave to adjourn. Clerk, roll please.
Councilperson Stillgrave? Vining? Germaine? Felder? Hayter? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Thank you all.